On today's show, we're going to do a quick comparison between two monster loudspeakers, the Infinity IRS-5 and the Genesis 1. So our question today comes from Alan in Wilmington, North Carolina. And he said, I just came across your videos a few days ago and have been watching as many as I can, kind of on a binge. Well, thank you. I was curious about the work that you and Arnie Nudell did at Genesis, so I looked up the Gen 1 loudspeaker. It looks a lot like the Infinity IRS-5 that you have in Music Room 1. Can you talk about the Genesis 1 and how it compares to the IRS-5? Sure. It's no coincidence that the Genesis 1s look like the IRS-5s. When Arnie Nudell and I began Genesis Technologies back in 1990. I had left 1991. I had left PS Audio after starting it in 1974. I had left it in 1990 to go build speakers with my pal and buddy, Arnie Nudell, who was the founder of Infinity. And this was a great opportunity for me to make a change, to learn about speakers, and just do something different. And you know, look, as I have said on these videos before, at that time, in the late 80s and early 90s, PS Audio was struggling financially. My fault. I am not a great business person at all. And Arnie had run, you know, $100 million company with Infinity. It was owned by Harman. And he was my really good friend. And so I accepted his offer to form a company with them, and we moved the family from California to Vail, Colorado, which is kind of cool, and started up Genesis. And at first we made round speakers, and I won't go into great detail. By the way, I have a book coming out called Confessions of an Audiophile, and in there I go to great details about the round speakers that we built, the 8300, the 8200, the 5200, and the big, what were the Gen 3s, I think they were called. We made big round one. We were in business with a company called API, which was Audio Products International, a Canadian company who made Mirage and Sound Dynamics, and they actually manufactured those for us. Well, those round speakers were great sounding products. They just weren't acceptable in the marketplace to most people who just couldn't imagine themselves having a round speaker in the home. I think they were just too advanced for their time, and we didn't do well with them. So at one point, we stopped manufacturing those, and Arnie and I said, let's wipe the slate clean and start from scratch with a new line of products. And Arnie came to me and he said, what do you want to make? And I said, you know what I want to make. I have always loved and always wanted a pair of the massive Infinity IRS-5s, which I now own. And I said, can we do better? And he goes, oh yeah. Oh, I could kick the IRS-5's ass if I had a chance to do it. And I said, well, let's do it. So over the next period of time, Arnie and I, and there's a ton of great stories that I share in the book. But anyway, these short videos, I don't have time to do that. But we were in a small office building on the second floor in the Vail Professional Building, and we built the Genesis 1s and then started manufacturing them. So what are the differences? Well, the original IRS-5s and 3s that were designed and built in the mid-80s, in 1983, 1984, something like that, used ribbon drivers, but they had multiple ribbon drivers. So there were 36 what we called emit tweeters, electromagnetic induction tweeters, and they had 12 larger ribbons, which were called EMIMs, electromagnetic induction mid-range, if I remember. There were 12 of those on the front. So those are the big wings that you see in the IRS. And so you got the row of tweeters, and then you have a row top to bottom in a line source of 12 mid-range drivers, the EMIMs. And then you had the woofer systems, and there were 6 12-inch woofers that had a single accelerometer and a 1,500-watt amp in the back. And that was the IRS-5, the most magnificent speaker system ever built. The Gen 1s were somewhat the same in that we had the same number of tweeters, and they were ribbon tweeters too. These were round ribbon tweeters compared to the emits, which were kind of small rectangular jobs. And the mid-range was the biggest difference. Arnie had never liked the idea of the 12 EMIMs lined up and put in series parallel. And what he wanted was a single driver, a single mid-range driver. And our buddy Bob Carver, at the time, happened to have purchased, and I don't know why, Bob's a pack rat, he happened to have purchased a warehouse full of neodymium magnets from Boeing. And Bob lives up in the Seattle area. And to build a ribbon speaker, you need magnets. So Bob and Arnie conspired together to build the first Carver ribbon. This was a huge 5-foot, 6-foot tall ribbon made with these neodymium magnets that Carver had scrounged somewhere from Boeing aircraft. And that became the mid-range driver of the Genesis 1s. So that was a big difference. And the wings and all that, and the dimensions are about the same. The last bit was that I was assigned then the job, make a better servo system. So to do that, I worked with my buddy Bascom King, who actually designed the basic circuitry for that. And instead of having one big amplifier with one accelerometer to make the servo system work, we had the same number of woofers, but we used on each of the woofers an individual accelerometer and an individual power amplifier. So this was a 12-channel power amplifier along with 12 servo woofers in separate cabinets that made up this massive piece. And it was an extraordinary system, and in many ways, certainly in the bass, and I believe in the dynamic ability of the system better than the IRS-5. The reason I don't own a pair of Genesis 1s is because they're not that much better. They are better, but they're not that much better. And I always lusted after the IRS-5. And since I only have room for one, I chose the IRS-5. Probably more for the same reason I want an old Corvette compared to a new one, right? Not as good a car, but they're cool. And that's the story. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye.